This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Judith.
And I'm Alina. We both lost babies to SIDS in winter 2021.
In the throes of grief, I reached out to a stranger on the internet and our friendship was born.
In the years since, we've been working hard to survive, rebuild, and navigate the continual challenges that have come our way, including divorce,
Job loss,
dating while bereaved,
moving multiple times,
health scares,
pregnancy and parenting a living child,
starting new jobs, and so much more.
We are tired.
Happily ever after is out of the question for us, but this podcast documents our journeys to happier ever after because we believe life after loss is worth living.
So join us as we laugh, cry until we laugh.
Welcome to As Long As I'm Living podcast.
We're so glad you're here.
Okay, guys, welcome back. This week, we're continuing our conversation with Rochel. We really hope you enjoyed this conversation. I think as you'll hear the way she speaks about Sophie and her brother-in-law and her grandmother, just beautiful and touching, and she gets it.
A lot of love there. She really gets the grief. So this is Alina Quinn's mom signing off, heading you into the episode. We've got Judith Aiden's mom here, and this is Rochel, Sophie's aunt, to talk to us about a lot of stuff, feelings. I don't know.
You like it. Bye.
Bye.
See you on the flip side. Something that's interesting about your experience, Rochel, is that the people that died in your life, you had time. You really had time. Tell me, I had no time.
Judith, you mean time? You're saying time because there was an awareness that death was impending. Yeah.
Yes. Maybe too much time. I don't know. Maybe you feel too much time.
Yes. There's always like there's good and bad about both.
Yeah. I'm curious what you think. I had no time. Alina, you had no time. There was no time. We found them dead. They were already dead. You were there, like you said, during the dying process. You were there in the, finding out about their illness, then watching the things change and evolve. And then the last few hours, you had hours. You said you sat by them for hours. Alina, hours. I didn't even get it. First of all, he died in 2 minutes, start to finish, from what the research says. I don't know if that's true, but my understanding is the whole thing was 2 minutes, and I certainly wasn't there. I was asleep. And when I found him, he was already dead. So I didn't have that. So can you tell me a little bit about what that experience looks like or feels like, just because I don't actually know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just taking a moment to take that in, because that is really different. That is really different. And there's no great way of going about this, I'm like, oh, that would be terrible. And
that's the thing. We say, wouldn't it have been great to have a couple of months? And then I know that those of people who have a couple months are like, wow, I wish this is really hard and I can't do another day. It's all bad. It's all bad.
By the way, I actually think my grandma did it right. One of my grandmas. She got sick on a Sunday and died the following Thursday.
Crushed it.
Perfect.
She had 5 days. She was in her 80s. And 5 days. It was really, everything was kind of, and she died, I think, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So everyone was already flying to town anyway. So she really kind of did it perfectly.
Shout out to Grandma Nancy. That was Nancy, right?
If I could put in my request, I think a week, it's enough time for everyone to say goodbye. Not enough time to wrap your head around it, but that seems almost painful, the long drawn out journey. So that's what I would say. Start to finish a week feels in your, elderly, in your 90s, start to finish a week feels good. Okay. That's what I'm going to say.
Noted. Noted.
If you could put in my request.
Yeah, so excruciating. Having, again, I want to give full honor to my brother and sister-in-law and to my sister, who this was their core losses. And my experience of the experience was that having that much time, I actually understand death. I believe it's a transition. I know that we're the only ones who lose out in the dynamic. Death makes a lot of sense to me in my spiritual alignment. Suffering is is the thing that was the most devastating in my narrative. and the most confusing between me and the God of my understanding of just like, okay, death, I understand that happens. People come to the life for a certain amount of time. You get it done quickly, good. But suffering, like, there's so much anger, you know, and again, trust, but also a lot of permission for anger in the amount of suffering. The time is a blessing because yes, you get to dive into each moment. Every little thing becomes sacred in the face of a terminal diagnosis. That liminal space is you treasure each cup of coffee you get to have with this person. You know, you value every conversation. And then, you know, goes on for months or years. And you're in this in between, like you have to somehow live. There's a lot of life to be lived, and everything needs to be about right now because that's what we have. And I would say the time that I got to have by each of their bedsides as they were passing was definitely, like, I would say, some of the most precious, sacred moments of my life. I don't know if there are many more. I've sat with ayahuasca many times, you know, I journey frequently, I travel, but like this is infinite. And like trying to accommodate, like, okay, in these moments with this person, what do I want to facilitate them feeling? What kind of air do I want to bring? You know, for Sophie, it was like I told her a story of she was a princess and running through a field with everyone who loves her. You know, and there's different settings, hospital, home, you know, but I would just say that, like, time, it gets to be a lot more intense, and that's both in the beauty of it and in the torment.
Can I ask, the way you're describing this, and I wasn't present for Quinn's actual death. You know, I found him. It was much more of a, there was chaos. It wasn't, you know, a beautiful, I mean, the whole thing, it's always bad, but it was definitely not like a deliberate moment, right? It was a whole thing. But the way you describe being at the deathbed, it actually reminds me of the first time you meet a new baby, whether that's your baby or your loved one's baby, a niece, a nephew, a good friend's baby, where you meet them for the first time and there's like like your souls are meeting, and it's just a brand new person. And it's almost, I think it makes sense to me that those would feel like similar experiences, because although I am not a particularly spiritual or religious person, like those two moments in time in life are when the veil is so thin that new life, like a less than a day old baby or someone who's less than a day away from dying, like there's something really, it's the same. It's not the same, but it's the same. It feels the same. I can imagine it feels similar.
It's a form of being a doula, you know, like people who are hospice care workers, transition of life, psychedelic providers. Like it is this constriction to expansion moment.
Rochel, you would make an amazing death doula if you ever need another change of career.
You would be so good at that.
I also think maybe okay, you're describing two things that I kind of want to like piece apart. One of them is a sense of suffering, like the time before they die. Like there's that questionable period when you know they're going to die, but you don't know when or how or if, or
The actual experience of the body dying is suffering, right? Like the systems are shutting down. There's physical pain.
yes, like it's the final stage sounds like in some ways it's like a holy kind of like timeless experience, and then it's almost like everything before is like achingly, like that awareness of time sounds almost aching, sounds like kind of painful, you know, like the thinking, like every cup of coffee you have to be like so hyper aware of every moment, every second. It's like, how can you exist in that like high intensity constantly. That's what I'm hearing. Tell me what explain it to me more, because like I said, I didn't get that experience. I didn't get either of those experiences, to be completely honest. By the time he died, like Alina said, like it was over.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to speak to that for a moment, because I'm feeling the grief in my body of not being able to have had that time that I'm describing as precious, and just to attend to that. There's also some incredible grace at a child or a spouse or whoever it is, like going to bed with everything being fine. Like this person went to bed with a loved, happy nervous system.
Yeah.
and yes, maybe that's an experience that you didn't get to or that wasn't yours to share. And they were surrounded by so much yum.
Yeah.
Someone who has an illness that you do have that time, like it's a lot. So there's, again, it all sucks. But I just want to attend to that, like, that's also really, really beautiful and beautiful is a hard word, but you know what I mean, that like
a lot of our followers have lost babies during pregnancy. And I think that they can really probably relate to what you're saying right now, which is that like their baby died in the womb. Imagine being a more, yes, death. No, they should not have died. And also they got to be in the coziest, warmest, most nurturing possible space for the time of their passing. So there's something tragic, obviously, and something really beautiful about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that all they knew was safety and love, like and warmth, and that's incredible. And again, I can only speak to my experience,
which was 3 experiences, so it feels like a majority of this.
I just want to honor my siblings. I want to honor my siblings' experiences as theirs, because I'm sure they would say something different.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's I have great the death day. Each one to me was incredibly powerful. The time before, I cannot even tell you how many depressive episodes I had over that time period. Being a sibling, trying to figure out like, what the hell can I do to show up?
Yeah.
And not just for this kid, like, what does it look like to show up for my brother, who, like, I'm not gonna call him and be like, yo, how are you doing? He's gonna cry on my shoulder. Like, what does it mean to show up for this specific person? What does it mean to try, when the world is shutting down, to show up for my sister's kids? So there's all of the dynamic around, but it is chronic stress and hope and fear. And even when someone receives a terminal diagnosis, like, Sophie, can I share a story?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sophie's last, she had 3. Sophie's last diagnosis, she was given very little time by the doctors, and but Sophie every year would go to this Camp Simcha, which is a camp set up for children with illnesses and disabilities, and she loved it. Sophie, like, stayed alive for camp. She literally far surpassed any expectations. Every day they debated about, like, do we send her home? Do we keep her here because of how ill she was? But Sophie wanted to be in camp, and she ended up, like, passing away a bit after she got home. But we never know how much time we have. And so it's how do you continue living when you're also looking at death?
Right.
When nothing else really matters, right? Like, nothing, job and money doesn't matter in the context of losing a child. And yet, insurance matters.
Yeah.
And your relationship with your partner matters, you know?
I felt that way after Aiden died for a long time. But what I'm hearing, it's like, but also for people who are going through this longer version of death, is like you have the entire before it too. It's like such a drawn out experience. It's so drawn out, you know? Like for me, I can only speak about my experience. The day before money mattered and the day after money didn't matter, you know? The day before, like, I cared about my job. I cared about showing up for the world. I cared about showing up for people. Like, I was my fullest self until I was nothing. But, you know, if I had a child who was very sick or dying or someone in my life that I had to be in that emergency mindset for such a prolonged period of time, it's very hard. To live when nothing matters is very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, it's the suffering. It's the suffering that is the hardest. And one of the beautiful things about kids is that even in the context of suffering, like if there's something that delights them, and I know like with Sophie, her smile came easily.
Yeah.
Like she was just a smiley kid. And so even in the context of her pain, like intermittently you would just get a flash of like joy when she would immerse herself in something. Or quite frankly, like my brother-in-law, his illness was terrible. And intermittently he would just connect with his mission and purpose and joy, and in a way that people could really, really hear. You know, he spoke so loudly. And so that time, while I wouldn't wish it on anyone, like every day is also really, really precious.
Yeah. I actually do remember that. And like I said, like I don't know your sister at all, but she was like posting very publicly during this whole thing happened. And I remember them, you know, it was very clear that he was happy and joyful and like he was like someone whose light touched many people. And actually, like I want to talk to you about that also because you write very publicly about these things. And how do you feel? I know it sounds like I do speak publicly because I have a podcast that, you know, like what 50,000 people have downloaded or 55, I don't know how many people. So you might think that I speak very publicly about it, but I speak very publicly about it within a very safe space for me. I don't post very much. I actually made a new Instagram because I can't even go on I don't like to go on my old Instagram. I have like very weird feelings about posting and talking about it. I have very weird feelings about like sharing something so deep and so private within a space of people who I don't think get it. So how and why and, you know, like what is your perspective about sharing so publicly? Because that's something very, I don't know, Alina, you don't either. Alina, who like you never, and you like, you don't feel it's weird to take naked pictures of yourself. I am like deeply.
Believe it or not, Rochel, this is not the first time we talked about that on this podcast. Love it.
But I find that very interesting. Don't you find that interesting, Alina? You and I like would not talk about this on our own personal pages. And yet, Rochel, you speak about it and your family speaks about it. And you posted that beautiful thing about Sophie on your personal page. Like, talk to me a little about your experience.
I posted on when he died, something that I look back and I feel like, yeah, that was personal and heartfelt. I don't remember writing it, but I posted then. I've posted on the death anniversary, and I've posted on his birthday and a Mother's Day. But like a sentence or two.
A sentence or two. And also, do you post on his birthday now?
No, and I've stopped.
I stopped too.
And the things that I have written that have been the most effort I've put into writing, writing that I've done publicly has been on behalf of organizations that I'm trying to raise money for. So I've written on behalf of the Milk Bank, where I donated my milk after Quinn died. I've written on behalf of Empty Arms, which is a support group organization and I do it because it has felt good to write, and it does feel good to share. But I also know that the words are poignant and people donate. And so like part of it, there's a motivation there. And then of course I do all of this sharing, but as Judith said, in a very like what feels like a very safe space. Admittedly, plenty of people in my life listen to this podcast. A lot of people, probably people I don't even know, listen from like high school and whatever. And that's fine. Hi, welcome. I love to have you here. But I don't write and share about this a lot globally in the rest of my life. I just don't.
What do you think has contributed to you not posting anymore on the birthday?
You know, I think that it never felt like I was doing it for me or for Quinn. It felt like I was doing it. That is not a way that it doesn't serve my grief to write and share publicly like that. So there always felt like there was a purpose, whether it was, I don't want people to forget about his birthday, which is a reason in and of itself to do that. At this point, I feel a little bit less, what's the word? Accountability for people forgetting his birthday at this point, or I don't know what the right word is, but if they're going to forget, they're going to forget. I think at the beginning, it felt very painful that anyone on earth would forget that he was born. Now I'm like, there are going to be people who forget he was born. You don't remember every single person's birthday on earth. And so that it feels a little bit different. And I also think that I've built such a community of people who do remember that I feel less of a drive to make every single person remember, because there are enough people who remember. I think that's it.
Yeah.
There's another thing that I'll just add that I agree with all those things, Alina. That's why I don't post. But also, I feel like words can't capture it, and so everything I say feels kind of cliche. And another thing is that it would hurt me deeply. I'm so sensitive to, like, what if somebody who I thought was a close friend, or I feel is a close friend, saw and didn't say anything, would be very hurtful. And if nobody, I'm hurt. I'm scared that people won't receive it well. And this is such a vulnerable thing for me that I'd be really scared that I would be hurting so much because someone said the right thing or the wrong. And normally I don't think people can say the wrong thing, but for some reason it just feels like when you're putting your heart out there and someone likes it with a thumbs up, you know?
Yeah. Well, Rochel, you're such a beautiful writer that if I could write that way, if I had the gift with words that you do, because I do think, to your point, Judith, some of it is, it feels like what I say does not match the magnitude of what I feel, because I just don't have, that is not a skill set I have. I have lots of skills. That is not one of them.
And some of the people who are receiving it don't know how to hold it with me.
Yes.
So it feels very scary to put your heart out and somebody respond with a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Even though thumbs up is perfectly adequate and I'm pro thumbs up, it's me. My skin is so raw that it would hurt.
Yeah. I would say that we all have our modalities of expression and I'm liking the word transmutation for what you guys are doing with this podcast. You're transmuting energy into something else. I do that through writing, and that has always been the case for me. I challenged myself to write publicly about sensitive things from my early 20s. Because I really have always felt like it's a part of my mission here. I have big feelings, and I think I have interesting ways to manage them and to cope with them. And it has seemed consistently like people connect to that. And I think I looked at my fear again throughout my 20s. I had an article, my scariest article by far. And once I did that, I was good to go, I think, for forever, was about, surviving a sexual assault and what's on the other side of that.
I read that. And I listened to the podcast you did about that.
We've stayed connected. Look at this.
Rochel, now that I think about it, I think I've been lurking in the background, listening to I've been now that you mention those things, I've been watching you from the sidelines.
Here's the thing. And I had no idea, right? And here's the thing about writing publicly is that you have no idea who it's going to touch. And often, I used to write things and then delete them if it didn't get enough likes. And then I had to go through this question of who's it for? Who's it for? Do you have something to say? Is it important? Right? And if even one person reads it, if I got one like, would that be hard for my self-esteem? Would that feel like, oh, it's not worth the vulnerability? Absolutely. And it would be entirely worth it. And I don't know how many people are reading it and not liking it. I had no idea that you like it is beyond me that you have kept a piece of my writing in your wallet. Like, that means so much. I don't even know.
And the irony of what it is, Rochel, I gotta go. I'm like 99% sure I know which one it is. The irony is how differently I feel about what you're writing about, and I'll tell you what it is in a second. And I still keep it. I still keep it in my wallet, even though I'm not sure I believe any of it anymore. Just in case you're wondering, I still keep it there.
Well, Rochel, you wrote something so beautiful about Sophie, and it affected our entire community. I'm not kidding you. Judith, you should send her some screenshots of the messages we got. It was just like heart emojis, sob emojis. Like, people felt something reading that.
Yeah, but Alina, that's because she's writing to. I mean, well, she wasn't. You were just writing out into the ethers, but.
She wasn't writing to the population of people who lost a child.
I know, but I feel like when I'm posting on social media, I'm sandwiched in between someone's trip to Bali and someone's dinner last night. And here's my dead son in between someone tanning and a salmon, and that's hard for me. I'm not saying it's, I want to talk it through, Rochel, because I think it's valuable. And Aiden's birthday's in 10 days. Every year I wrestle with, what am I going to say? Am I going to say something? Should I say something? Who should I say it to? Is there value in adding more noise to the salmon? Like, I don't know. And I wrestle with it. And to me, you are someone who's done it right. And I'm not sure. To me, when you post, I read it. First of all, I really only go on Facebook to go on Facebook Marketplace because I have a really weird hobby. It's not a weird hobby. It's a great hobby. I'm like an addict to like reselling things, but that's a side point. Point is that when you post, I read it, but I don't, the question is like, you're doing it for you. So what do I get if I post? What is it for? Were you doing it for you when you were posting about Sophie, or you were doing it for Sophie too?
Almost. It's a yes and. Through years of refinement, I always think about why I'm posting and what I want people to come away feeling. Not feeling for me, feeling. Social media, we have this capacity nowadays that we've never had before in generations past, that, like, we're not just standing on a box in the middle of the central square and whoever's there listens. Like, we can potentially shoot out a message and have everyone see it. And so what do I want to do with that voice? And sometimes and rarely I will have a post that I'm just like, please grieve with me. Like, I'm right here with my heart and I'm scared that people are forgetting. But more often it's like, oh, I want to take this experience and help other people feel less alone. Like, my pain is for sure, I'm not the only one experiencing this. So, like, if I put my pain onto paper, then there will be someone out there, likely multiple people, who will feel a little less hopeless in theirs. And so that's the value, is like, I want people to feel less alone. Or when it comes to Sophie, of course, I want people to remember her. I want people to know her. One of the things that I did not realize, because my grandmother had a massive following on Facebook. She didn't have a Facebook account. I used to post about her. Every post, those were my most popular posts. I would just post about our adventures. Again, she was like 100-year-old woman. We like, one day I came home and from a hookah bar, and she was like shaking her finger at me, and I was like, oh my, have you even been to a hookah bar? And so we went to the hookah bar, and I would just post about this woman. And I didn't realize everyone fell in love with my grandmother, right? Like, people know Oma more than in my circle.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And what I didn't realize until after she passed away and people started reaching out to me is that the writing let them get to know her. Like I just thought they were loving her, but they were loving the way that I was translating her. And so we get to do that with our expression. You do this in your podcast. You don't need to write if you don't want to. And for someone who does want to write, for someone who does want to post, how do you want people to feel? And what do you want them to carry? And can you even communicate? Like for me, my big ask on Sophie's birthday is every year is for people to either eat pizza, which was her favorite food, to spend a moment doing something yummy for themselves or with intention with their kids. Like this is what, or playing or dancing. Like this is who she was and who she continues to be. And I think that it's not just like, hey, can you be sad with me about this? I don't like the word dead, but like this dead child, this child who has passed, who isn't here. But like, hey, can you partner with me in helping her like live on? And like, who doesn't want to partner in such an experience?
But I feel like as someone who has lost a child, like that resonates deeply with me. And like this idea of living on is something that I'm well versed in that language. But do you ever feel like you're speaking English and everyone around you is speaking Spanish? Like maybe there are a few people who understand it, but there are a lot of people who are like, what? Like they can't meet you where you are.
Like to me, I'm like, yes, of course. On Sophie's birthday, I will eat pizza. But then there are other people who are like, why would I eat pizza on Sophie's birthday?
She's dead.
Like I'll eat pizza, but she's dead.
Right.
Like, does that hurt? Does it hurt your, like, are you still happy if someone eats pizza, even if they're like, I don't get it, I'm just eating the pizza?
Or not
like,
even.
I think that would hurt my feelings.
I think it would hurt my feelings, yes. Or what would be harder for me and would be to have, like I said, sandwich between Bali and salmon, and then someone swiping like, oh, Judith's still grieving. Like, like not even acknowledge. You put your heart and soul out there and you say like, I need help carrying this. It's so heavy and I'm so alone and I'm so lost. And someone just writes you off.
Judith, that's the other thing too, is I have never been a big poster. So I know my entire feed would be baby grief, dead baby anniversary, dead baby. I'm still sad about the dead baby. I'm not going to post about Bali. Like I'm not going to post about my salmon dinner. So like it's all, the entire feed is going to be baby, dead baby. It's a lot.
Wait, for me, it's worse because what it is baby born, baby died, baby born, baby still dead
baby birthday,
new baby. She's all fixed now.
Yeah.
That's what the narrative would look like for an outsider. And I'm so sensitive to that because I have worked so hard to grow and to maintain this relationship with Aiden and just to make his loss filled with so many nuanced, beautiful, complicated. It's like my life's work is living after his loss, and to simplify it and to like boil it down where people just see it as like, oh, dead baby, birthday, alive baby, dead birthday, like just this like boilerplate, just like this basic, that I think would be so hard for someone to walk by and be like, she's fine now.
And by the way, Rochel, I know that I can't thank you enough for letting us we clearly have big thoughts and feelings about this. And I can imagine, first of all, that like every person is a little bit different. So you might feel slightly differently about this. It's also different relationships you're grieving, like all of this stuff. You have a different way with sharing and with words. So that's also different. But I think like what I'm feeling right now, the takeaway is like all of the words you shared for this past hour that we've been talking have brought up these things for us and have made us feel all these things. So like, again, I'm saying thank you for sharing and for feeling what you're feeling out loud so that we got to have this conversation. And our listeners are going to love this conversation. I'm telling you right now, they are going to love this conversation.
Well, because they probably wrestled with it too, because Russell, you're someone who does it right. You're someone who can do it to make people feel. You are if I could move people with my words in the way that you move people, it would be a given. But there's these shades of gray where you're like, I don't think that my words come off right? It's like, that's what I'm saying. When you fall in the shades of gray, you don't want to just post a picture and be like, still dead. You want to say something, but you know that you can't capture what it is. That's kind of where I fall into this, like, what should I post? Should I not? And it feels dumb, I know, to have this conversation, but I swear anyone who's lost a child is wondering. We're like, should we say something? Should we not? What should we say? How do we go about this? This is complicated. Our worlds are so public nowadays that it feels like by not saying, you're almost making a statement that you're not saying something. So you brought up all these things, and Aiden's birthday is in 10 days. So anyway, I was thinking about these things because I need to decide, because every year I need to decide. And my solution has been to create a space in this podcast and in our community that is so receptive, that is so loving, that gives me the space to write and gives me the space to express myself, that feels like I am fully accepted and everyone sees how hard I've worked to get to this point and they see my joy and my loss equally. So it's not like I have nowhere to go. I'm just saying I wrestle. That's all I'm saying. I wrestle.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. And
I would encourage you and anyone who's thinking about, like, how can I make sure, like, to find what your expression is, right? Like, you don't post on Facebook. You have a podcast, okay? Like, why do you need to post on Facebook? Do you want to post on Facebook?
I don't know.
And that gets to be an exploration, but it's not. I would just, you are honoring.
Yeah.
It is, you're good enough is good enough. And it may change next year. You may be clear on what you want to do, right? And like, where you are right now in this process is where you are. And
I don't think Aiden and Quinn are up there like, Mom, why didn't you post on my birthday?
Yeah.
Just as Sophie, I'm sure, is not like, we didn't have a birthday party for me this year, or last year you had a piñata and there's no piñata this year. Like, I'm sure they're not up there thinking that.
I have a story. I think it was Sophie's birthday 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. I was at a training. And I had these plans, like, as it was a somatic therapy training, and I had these plans to, like, get snacks for everyone, and it was in the middle of nowhere, Vermont. And like, I realized, like, I showed up to the day and I had done nothing and I had planned nothing. And the amount of just like heaviness and shame and fear, right? That I wasn't throwing a party, and I was like, maybe I'll invite everyone to dance for 15 minutes. And you know what ended up happening was we have these shares at the beginning of the day, these little check-in circles, and where everyone has 2 minutes just to share where they're at. And then you're not allowed to really respond to anyone else, and you just go on. And I showed up and I shared, it's my niece's birthday in front of people who had never read about her on Facebook. It's my niece's birthday. She passed away, and I'm feeling really, really, I don't know if it was like afraid or ashamed or sad or guilty that I did not get snacks for everyone. And someone it was a group of women, and one of the women just asked, like, would it be okay if I just stand behind you and put a hand on your shoulder? And I said yes. And one by one, each of these women came and stood behind me and just put a hand somewhere on my body. And then we cried together. And it wasn't a Facebook post.
Yeah.
Judith, I'm reminded of the episode we just recorded. So at the time this episode comes out, and this one that you're listening to right now, listeners, will be after the one that I'm about to talk about. It's called Invisible String. But Judith was sharing about how she's going to have to work on Aiden's birthday this year for the first time. And the guilt and the fear that, is this now I'm okay enough to work on his birthday? Does that mean I've moved on and it's over and I'll never go back to making his birthday a special holy day again? And all the feelings of that episode. I'll try to remember to link it in the description when this episode comes out. But I feel like you were just speaking right to that.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
And it's remarkable to me, Judith, that we just talked about this like 3 days ago.
We're just trying our best here. And we're just bringing what we can.
And you know what's cool is that these kids would know that. We're the ones that get confused.
That's so true.
Yeah.
We're like, oh no, I didn't make you a party. And they're just like, oh, I love you. Thank you for loving me.
Yeah, because Alina, I was just having this conversation because I was saying to Alina that I went to get the dinosaur. This year we're having a dinosaur themed birthday, and I was like, every year it's like a thing. It's like a thing. It's like I need to make a party with a dinosaur and a theme and a this and a that. And then I was telling Alina, I was like, what if they don't care? Like, what if I'm like spending all day going to make a dinosaur cake and like they don't even like dinosaurs, they don't even care, and they don't even need dinosaurs, and here I am going crazy about dinosaurs, and the party is for me.
And that's okay.
And that's what it is.
That is what it is.
Or the party is it just is. This is why people don't want dead children. They want alive children because then they get to go to birthday parties and they're not like sitting there like in the aisle being like, my baby, like, does he like Paw Patrol or does he like dinosaurs? What does he like? I don't know. I don't know what he likes. I don't know how to do his birthday right. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to celebrate it. I want to get it right. I want him to feel loved and happy, and I want it to be good, and I want it to be right. And I swear he just like doesn't care. He doesn't care, Judith. He doesn't care.
The thing though, like, he doesn't care. Like, I really believe like they don't care about the specifics. None of it matters. They're not offended. He's not like up there being like, I don't like dinosaurs. He's like, my mom loves me so much.
Yeah.
You know, like that's, I think, what they're feeling is not, I mean, again, this is all so abstract, but like, I don't think they have a concept of a dinosaur birthday party for a 4-year-old. Like, that's not a thing where they are, but they're getting the love and the feeling and the care and the intent of the party. And they feel so loved and cared for. And I also want to say for our listeners, I don't throw my son a party every year. I don't. I've done it before and I don't every year. And I probably won't this coming year because I'll be tired. I'll hopefully have, fingers crossed, an alive baby. Maybe this year I will throw a party. I don't know. All this to say, I still think my son feels loved and remembered on his birthday. And it has nothing to do with the dinosaur party.
Or the Facebook post.
And yet, one of the ways that Judith shows love for Aiden is with the dinosaur party. And that feels good to you and your family. And it means something to you. And so it means something to him.
Yeah.
Am I making any sense? I'm just rambling now. I feel so many feelings today.
Rochel, you really got us. You really got us.
We're all here together.
Thank you for being on this podcast, and thank you for speaking so beautifully and vulnerably, and thank you for letting us remember Sophie and getting to know her and getting to meet her.
And your brother-in-law and your grandma.
And your brother-in-law and your grandma. Although I will say that I do think these children are all hanging out together up there. And I like to think that when I spend time with the people that they love, that they spend time with each other. And and I love making Aiden new friends. He's a Sagittarius, so he definitely is friendly and he definitely is outgoing. So I think it's always like it feels good to introduce him to more people who will love him and he will love and expand his circles a little more. So thank you for sharing.
Sophie will get him a pizza on his birthday.
Counting on it, Sophie. I'm counting on it.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow.
Yay!